Warning: tube amplifiers have lethal voltages inside them. Please do not attempt to build, test, or repair these without understanding and following all safety protocols.
Hey y'all! Well, you probably saw the thumbnail and you're here to see a review on a heat gun, and you're looking at just tube amplifiers here and there's a soldering iron. You're like, what's going on? What was this, a clickbait? No. We've got the mini heat gun. Little Amazon purchase I made. I had some pretty thick heat shrink tubing that I was putting on the power switch on this, and in the past I've just used the smaller kind of thin gauge heat shrink tubing, and one of the little tricks I do is I take this part of the soldering iron that's hot, and obviously it's not hot right now, but run it like that along the side of the heat shrink tubing and kind of turn it around and shrink it like that. It's always worked great. Like I said, it's, you know, the real small diameter thin stuff. Well, this was some of this fatter stuff. I think it was almost double wall. It had the like adhesive on the inside of it. It was 3/4 inch to put around the power switch, and that wouldn't work. Tried the hair dryer, that wouldn't work. So I was like, time to get a heat gun for my shrink tubing. And I've got a big heat gun that I used years ago for pulling up some floor tiles that were, you know, adhesive. And I knew that would like just melt the guts out of this. So I looked on Amazon, saw this little guy, of course, made in China, but it's like everything else. Just about everything is nowadays. So anyway, not going to hold that against this. It's a Romech. Hey, just says small size heat gun, color red. Is it any good? I don't know. We're going to find out. Let's get to testing it.
I've been wanting to get one of these for some of the larger heat shrink, especially going to have to do on this new amp. I want to heat shrink the wires going to the power switch for, you know, I find it kind of comical. They want you to heat shrink or seal off the 110 volt AC wiring, but nobody cares about the 500 volts DC that are inside the amp. But anyway, I'm going to put some heat shrink over the power switch, and I realized that my normal procedure of using like the side of the soldering iron isn't going to deal with this larger, kind of thicker heat shrink tubing. So I've ordered this little heat shrink gun, and I hope that it will do what I'm wanting to do. And so let's take a look at this little guy. This is kind of nice. It's got a little stand there where you can do that deal. It comes with some different tips here. One of these looked really useful. So it's got one that's kind of a little fan deal that, you know, concentrates it like in that direction or this direction like. But then this one's kind of cool. It goes on the end of this like this, and then you put the wire or whatever you're going to heat shrink in here, and it keeps it from like melting stuff or heating up stuff on the other side of the heat shrink tubing. It concentrates it. I'm assuming it's going to like kind of reflect off of this, so maybe you can shrink on the back side of things. But anyway, this was on Amazon. It was pretty cheap. It was under 20 bucks. I'll put a link in the description below. And shortly here, we're going to do a little demo on some pretty thick heat shrink tubing that I got for this power switch and see how it works. Here's the heat shrink tubing that I'm trying to shrink up around this power switch. And I decided not to use the little plug because I needed to put the snubber capacitor on the switch. And so, since I soldered the wires directly up to the pins and they're exposed, I wanted to put some, you know, shrink wrap over it, and had to get some pretty thick 3/4 inch diameter stuff. So I've got two different nozzles I can try. I've got, you know, this little fan one, and I've got this one which normally would work great for wires. You could just kind of go like that around it, but this is so big, I can't really, you know, get around it to do that. I mean, I guess I could, you know, use it a little bit on the back side like that to start with, but I'm going to see how it works just using this fan pattern one. And I did a little bit of shrinking on it to start with. I thought, well, maybe I could use my hair dryer, but that just wasn't enough. So I ordered this little heat shrink gun, and let's start on the low setting and see what happens. So that's taken quite a while to do much. I'm going to go ahead and crank it up to the high setting and see how that works. High setting definitely shrunk that down. Let me put this little shield thing on here and see if I can get it to reflect up on the underside. There we go. That worked great. And definitely put some heat and everything, but it's totally shrunk down there now and protected from someone sticking their finger down in there, which, you know, like I said, it seems kind of silly to me that people get all stressed out about protecting prying fingers from 110 volt here when you've got, what, 700 volts over here? But that's kind of the rules. So yeah, that shrunk everything all down. And this is the heat shrink tubing that I was using. It's some pretty heavy duty stuff. I think it's even double wall, and I think it's got some adhesive on the inside of it once it melts. But got this off Amazon too. I'll put a link in the description below so that if you're working with one of these switches, then, you know, you can buy a roll of that stuff if you want to, which is the really bad thing about DIY and some of this stuff. They have this, you know, it's a 10-foot roll or something. They don't sell just little short pieces. I guess maybe they have an assortment that has short pieces, but the little heat shrink assortment I've got didn't have anything this big. So anyway, kind of rambling on here. So that's a review on our little Romech heat shrink tubing gun, and for less than 20 bucks, I think it's a winner. So looks like a great place to wrap up this video. So as you can see, this is a pretty nice little heat gun, and I will say the attachments that it comes with are nice. Seems to work good. You saw it shrink the tubing, and I think if I'd started out with the hot setting, it would have worked even better. And I tried it since then on my second amp, and what I did this time was I started out on the hot setting without this on there, just a bare thing, and heated up the one side. Didn't really shrink it up tight, but just shrunk it down a little bit to the point that I could rotate it around and get the part that I'd kind of pre-shrunk on the back side. And then I was able to shrink the front side down nice and tight. And then I snapped this little guy on at the very end, and it kind of went around the wiring part of it and just shrunk that up nice and tight. And it worked great. And it didn't take but a couple of minutes, if that, to do the heat shrink tubing on the power switch. So that was a win. Again, I don't know how well this thing will hold up long term. If I was using something like 8 hours a day, obviously, I don't say obviously, but I have a feeling this probably wouldn't hold up. But the short duty cycle that I'm going to be using this thing is probably going to work great. Obviously, if it doesn't, we'll come back and I'll talk about what a piece of junk it is. But for now, it gets Skunky's thumbs up. So, going to put a link in the description below. Oh, and I did want to add, the only thing that kind of a little bit of a downside is the cord's pretty short. And some people might think that's a good thing. You can always hook it to extension cord. I doubt anybody's use this would reach all the way to the wall. So it's really not a bad thing, but my extension cord is kind of down here on the floor, and it was a little too short for that. It ended up getting a power strip on the other side of my workbench, which I've been wanting to do anyway. And so, hey, maybe it's a good thing. It prompted me to do this little other project that I've been meaning to do for a long time. So if I had anything, downside to it is the cord seems a little short, but I'm not going to take a star off of that. So if you're enjoying this video,
Please subscribe. Please like the video. Thanks to all you Patreon supporters. Also you folks that make donations at my website. Always thankful for that. And until next time, have a nice day.